Good morning. I have my base skincare routine on, my face freshly washed, and I'm finishing my coffee. I thought that I would take you along today in the morning for a couple minutes through just my basic, like, get ready with me that I do every 2 days because I'm also going to be curling my hair and putting on the same makeup that I put on every single day. And we are going to chat about the second video, the second set of tips on how to live a feminine life, how to have a feminine lifestyle. My mini series, if you haven't checked out my first video, I'm going to link it down below. But anyway, yeah, some more tips that I have just genuinely thought about on how to live more of a feminine life. So let's get moving on, getting ready for the day.
Could have probably picked a better angle. However, regardless, I'm going to put on the screen the names of the products that I use. Like I mentioned in the first video of this mini series, these tips that I'm going to go through are said in the affirmative, like affirmation style, but they of course are going to vary based on the person, so you don't have to take it personally. You just have to take what resonates with you and leave the rest. So let's get started. Number 1, I have a or a few feminine hobbies. Alternatively, I try to feminize my hobbies. I'm planning on making an entire video with hobby ideas, but for now, I want to share with you the 3 pillars of what I've learned, what you can incorporate to feminize your hobby or to select a feminine hobby to include in your lifestyle. And number 1 is movement or working with your hands. The second one is creativity, and a branch off of that can be learning something. The third is nature outdoors. So what I mean by feminizing a hobby, for example, you are into cross stitching. That's just a plain example, but the way that you can enhance your feminine hobby is by, for example, going out on your porch or in nature, or picking a nice park or like a nice view under a tree overlooking water. You get the point. Bringing it outdoors to more femininely enhance your hobby. And it's also a feminine hobby in the sense that it exercises your creativity. You are learning a new skill, but you are also working with your hands. So you satisfy all 3 criteria. Now, I'm going to save this a little bit more for the actual femininity video on feminine hobbies, but this doesn't mean that every single hobby is going to have these 3 pillars. It's just a guideline of how you can analyze your hobbies and make them a more feminine. Another very random hobby that I actually have a friend on Instagram, I saw her doing this, is she did like interpretive dance, or just like on a whim dance to music that she loved, like spiritual music, but she took her hobby outside to do it. So she satisfied the outdoors with the exercise component, with the creativity of like the interpretive type of dance. Everybody needs a hobby. I know in hustle culture, like modern society, hobbies, unless you can monetize them, seem kind of frivolous, but I really encourage you to prioritize hobbies in your life. They give you purpose, they give you meaning, and they help enhance your femininity. So an extension of that point of I have a feminine hobby or I feminize my hobbies would be, as a feminine woman, I prioritize my hobbies. They are an important pillar in my life, and I make sure every single week or every few days that I schedule time for my hobbies. Even if I'm a busy mom, even if I have a busy work schedule, this is a big proponent of my life as a feminine woman, and I need to force myself to get in the habit to have a feminine hobby. The second trait of living a feminine life in the affirmative is I am not afraid of using feminine language, feminine linguistic style. There's a big push, especially if you are in university, the academic sphere, or in certain workplaces, to adopt more of a masculine tone or like a masculine linguistic style. And I think that the big misconception here is that femininity is often associated with uncertainty or dancing around the point. And I really want to encourage you to understand that you can still make your point clear, but still use a feminine linguistic style. So what do I mean by a feminine linguistic style? So a feminine linguistic style tends to use more adjectives, more words to embellish, more politeness. It really seeks to create a kind of like message a tone of comfort and reassurance. However, like I mentioned, this does not mean that you dance around the point. I am not talking about using uncertain words such as maybe we should do this or perhaps have you thought about this. I still think that it's important to make your message clear, but I don't think that we need to shy away from being polite and treating other people with dignity and complimenting other people. There's something to be said using softer language, making people feel special in my response, but also making them feel safe to engage with me is a very valuable skill to have as a feminine woman. There are so many successful women out there who do not dull their femininity, who use more feminine linguistic style, and that is what I want you to remember when you are communicating as well. I don't want you to dull your light as a feminine woman, and so that's why I incorporated this as the second trait in living a feminine lifestyle. Like I mentioned in my femininity mistakes video, people can tell when you are communicating in an inauthentic way. And when you are inauthentic, it's going to cause for them to trust you less. So for that reason, we also don't want to dull our feminine communication if it is something that is more authentic to who we are. Something very unserious, and another example is the big push about a year ago online to stop using emojis because it was like recognized as chuggy from the older generation. But the point I want to make with this is that people started to sound overly harsh because I noticed a trend of many women just like totally cutting out the use of emojis, and it made their online communication on their Instagram stories or through text just look very inauthentic and cold. And I'm not saying as a feminine woman you have to use emojis, but my point here is you don't want to force yourself to be somebody that you are not. In your communication style, if somebody is really not going to interact with you or think of you in a certain way because you use more feminine linguistic style, you also have to think at the end of the day, is that somebody that if they're willing to not listen to your ideas because of, a certain amount of adjectives that you use, somebody that you want to actually interact with and have in your life at the end of the day? And I'm hoping that answer is no, because as feminine women, we do have to, defend ourselves in our right to be softer and to take up space and to be in this society. We don't have to make ourselves into men in order to be successful in whatever we choose to do. As a mother and a homemaker, raising a daughter and seeing her natural femininity evolve just so beautifully without any outside pressures, I want to be an inspiration to her to preserve that, to not let her light die out. And so also as a big sister to you, that is what I want for you. Lastly, the third point that I want to talk about today in living a feminine life, having a feminine lifestyle in the affirmative, is I put my needs first. Now, a lot of you might be like, whoa, Cynthia, you are a Christian, you are a full-time homemaker, you are a stay-at-home mom. Like, what do you mean put your needs first? You have many responsibilities, and I'm sure many of you listening here, like I mentioned, if you have a career or you are a homemaker on my channel and you like this type of homemaking content, you might be a little bit confused. But what I mean by putting your needs first is the so cliche type of understanding that like you can't put the oxygen mask on somebody else unless you put it on yourself. But let me elaborate a little bit further to not necessarily remain totally cliche. The feminine needs to rest. The feminine needs to beautify herself. The feminine needs to express creativity. Also going back to the first point, creativity. The feminine can't express creativity if she is lacking on sleep, if she is lacking on beautifying herself. And so that's what I'm talking about when I am talking about putting yourself first. There is a way that you can be an excellent homemaker or excellent in whatever your vocation is and still make concessions for putting your needs first, so to speak. The classic example of postpartum. You should not be the type of feminine woman that hasn't taken a shower. You need to take a shower, sis. Like, you need to get it done somehow. I understand how difficult it can be if your baby is crying. My baby had colic. Your baby in the bouncer right next to you while you're taking a shower is going to be okay, so that you have that 5 minutes to actually take care of yourself, to put your needs first in that situation. It's going to be okay. You are not like abandoning her. I need to give you that little bit of self-love, but let's extrapolate that to other aspects of your life and other types of feminine women. I will always fearlessly defend the need for women to rest, to sleep. I've already said this probably 5 times. I had a mother who encouraged me to rest. She allowed me to take mental health days, sick days when I was a teenager or even young. She encouraged me to create a nice atmosphere in my bedroom so that I could have restorative rest. Rest was a big thing in my household because she acknowledged that a sensitive soul, a sensitive feminine woman needs that physical rest. You don't win a special award, and nobody wants somebody to fully martyr themselves for the sake of being, that hot mess type of mom. That's why I always advocate for an 80-20 principle in pretty much every domain in my life. Like, that's why I even mentioned the concept of emergency meals. 20% of the time we are eating out and I am doing my Pinterest emergency meals board, but 80% of the time I am cooking from scratch. 80% of the time my home and my surroundings are meticulously clean, but 20% of the time I just let that go. 80% of the time I am fully wearing my color season. I'm wearing a flowy dress, but 20% of the time I just want to put on a pair of my baggy shorts from Lululemon and, have a makeup-free day. 80-20 is a good rule of thumb when it comes to resting and to the concept of putting yourself first, so to speak. And on the front of homemaking, for those of you who are here interested in more specifics on homemaking and motherhood, I am going to be making a video diving deeper on what I mean when it comes to pursuing excellence, but also making reasonable concessions for yourself. When you understand what excellence is, and for those of you who are Christian, of course, the Bible, it's going to have a plethora of examples of what we should pursue in terms of our vocation and excellence in womanhood. But making concessions for yourself is not necessarily aiming lower. It is just understanding that there's nuance in everyday life. I have so normalized being lazy and not pursuing excellence in everything that we do. But when you have a clear vision of the type of woman that you want to be, and you build your life around being that woman, putting yourself first comes more naturally, and understanding the nuance of life and building in concessions is easier. Practical examples of how I practice nuance but also put myself first is through my homemaking rhythm system, where I dedicate one day out of that homemaking rhythm system completely to myself. Like, for example, today I'm filming a video because this is what I like to do. For me, that's putting myself first, but also still pursuing excellence in my homemaking because I have structure and I have a purpose in what I'm doing as a wife and mother.
Thank you to everyone for watching, and a huge shout out to my members who make this more consistent content possible, who help me pour back into the channel. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, I will leave the link down below. Thank you again to everybody who is here. If you enjoy this series, please hit the like button, leave your comments down below, and I would love to chat with you. See you next time.